The Pittsburgh Steelers are getting ready for the 2025 regular season to begin with an away game against the New York Jets, and there is a unique sense of nervous energy buzzing through the Steel City. For a franchise built on stability, tradition, and a very particular brand of football, this year already feels like something of a reset. There are plenty of new faces wearing black and gold, and even though fans are used to seeing iconic players come and go, it feels different this time. When you look under center and see a quarterback as polarizing as Aaron Rodgers preparing to take his first official snaps in Pittsburgh, and when you see a wide receiver as physically dominant and well-known as DK Metcalf lining up wide, you cannot help but think that this version of the Steelers could either surprise the league or disappoint in spectacular fashion. The skepticism, however, has not disappeared. It remains rooted deep within the fanbase, and perhaps it is justified. After all, this team has struggled to find consistent offensive firepower in recent years, and the concerns about depth in the wide receivers room have not gone away simply because Metcalf is now part of the lineup. The offseason decision to trade away George Pickens still hangs like a dark cloud over conversations among fans. Pickens was seen by many as the future of the franchise, the kind of fiery, highlight reel playmaker who could become the centerpiece of a new era. Letting him go, even with Metcalf in the fold, has left many scratching their heads. Some believe the team ended up in almost the exact same spot as it was back in the summer of 2024, talented, yes, but thin, unbalanced, and perhaps one injury away from disaster. General Manager Omar Khan has been steady and deliberate in his approach, which has drawn both praise and frustration. On the one hand, he pulled off bold moves already this year, including the blockbuster trade with the Miami Dolphins that brought Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey to Pittsburgh while sending away Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the most recognizable defenders of the past 5 seasons. On the other hand, he has resisted making one final splash in the wide receiver market, even though just about every rumor and speculative report has linked the Steelers to one name or another across the NFL. It seems as if almost every single wide receiver who could potentially be moved, whether due to contract issues, locker room tensions, or shifting team priorities, has been tied in some way to the Steelers. And yet, no deal has come, and Week 1 is just around the corner. At this point, it is probably too late for Khan to pull off a move that would result in a new receiver being ready to contribute meaningfully against the Jets. Installing a fresh face into Rodgers' system this close to kickoff would require weeks of adjustment, chemistry building, and trust building, things that simply cannot be fast-tracked no matter how talented the player is. But make no mistake, the front office in Pittsburgh is paying close attention to every development around the NFL as the season prepares to unfold. They know that the first month or two can change everything. Teams that look stable in the summer sometimes implode by October, and players who seem untouchable today could suddenly be available tomorrow. For a franchise with playoff aspirations and a desperate need to maximize Rodgers' window, the Steelers are expected to keep their phones on and their eyes wide open as the trade deadline slowly comes into view. Perhaps the most intriguing storyline from another locker room comes out of Miami, where star wide receiver Tyreek Hill continues to find himself in a swirl of speculation. At the end of the 2024 season, Hill made waves by publicly hinting that he wanted out, but that request never materialized into an actual deal. Instead, he entered the offseason still a Dolphin, still one of the fastest and most dynamic playmakers in the league, but with questions surrounding his long-term happiness and relationship with the organization. This week, the speculation intensified when the Dolphins announced their captains for the 2025 season and Hill's name was noticeably absent. That might not sound like a major development to outsiders, but to those who have followed his career closely, it was stunning. Hill had been named a captain every year since arriving in Miami in 2022 after his high-profile trade from the Kansas City Chiefs. To see him excluded now, without any obvious explanation, raises eyebrows and fuels the narrative that something behind the scenes is fractured. When a player of Hill's caliber, a perennial Pro Bowler and arguably the most feared deep threat in the NFL, is suddenly no longer seen as captain worthy, it sends a message. It suggests that the locker room dynamics are shifting and that his relationships with teammates or coaches might not be as strong as they once were. Officially, there have been no credible reports that Hill is on the trade block right now, and head coach Mike McDaniel has downplayed the significance of the development. When asked about it by reporters, McDaniel opted not to dwell on Hill's omission but instead praised the players who were given the honor. It was a coach's answer, diplomatic and carefully worded, but it did little to stop the rumblings. For fans of the Steelers, this is the kind of situation that cannot be ignored. Even if Hill starts the season in Miami, the possibility exists that his frustration could boil over as the weeks progress. If the Dolphins struggle or if Hill feels marginalized, the front office in Miami could be faced with a tough decision. Would they keep a disgruntled star and risk further drama, or would they entertain offers in hopes of reshaping their roster and eliminating the distraction? Given that Hill has already been the subject of trade rumors for months, it is not far-fetched to imagine that scenario. And if that scenario unfolds, who would be better positioned to swoop in than the Pittsburgh Steelers? This is a team that already has a working relationship with the Dolphins after their June blockbuster. They know how to negotiate with one another, they know what assets are on the table, and both franchises have shown a willingness to think boldly. Khan is not reckless, but he is opportunistic. If Hill becomes available and the price is right, Pittsburgh could be one of the first teams to place a call. Imagine for a moment what that would look like. Aaron Rodgers throwing deep to both DK Metcalf and Tyreek Hill. A pair of mismatches on the outside that would force defenses to pick their poison every single snap. For a franchise that has always prided itself on tough defense and a smash-mouth running game, such an offensive shift would feel almost revolutionary. It would instantly change the perception of the Steelers from a team with offensive questions to one with one of the most dangerous arsenals in football. Rodgers, at this stage in his career, would be given the ultimate gift, two elite targets who can win in completely different ways. Of course, Steelers fans know better than anyone not to count their chickens before they hatch. Pittsburgh is not a franchise that has ever lived off flashy moves or quick fixes. Its history is built on scouting, development, and grinding opponents down. But in the modern NFL, you cannot ignore the arms race happening across the league. Look at the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Bills, even the Jets. They all understand that star quarterbacks need elite weapons, and you cannot leave anything to chance when the margins are razor thin. The Steelers adding Hill to Metcalf would be the equivalent of jumping into that arms race with both feet. For now, it remains speculation. But speculation is what fuels fan conversations, especially in Pittsburgh, where every move is analyzed, debated, and dissected. The truth is that this 2025 season has the potential to be one of the most unpredictable in recent Steelers memory. Between Rodgers' arrival, the Pickens trade, the looming question of depth at wide receiver, and now the whispers about Tyreek Hill, there are enough storylines to keep fans glued to their screens all year long. What will actually happen remains to be seen. Rodgers could prove his doubters wrong and build instant chemistry with Metcalf, making everyone forget about the lack of depth. Or the offense could sputter, forcing Khan to make an aggressive midseason move. Hill could remain a Dolphin and smooth things over in Miami, or he could push his way out and become the biggest trade chip of the season. The only certainty is that the Steelers will not be far from the conversation, and in Pittsburgh, that is exactly how fans like it. Steelers football has always been about passion, intensity, and the belief that anything is possible on a Sunday. As the 2025 campaign begins, that belief is alive and well, even if it comes with a heavy dose of anxiety. Whether it's Rodgers finding one more magical run in his Hall of Fame career, Metcalf proving to be worth every bit of the hype, or perhaps even a shocking midseason trade that reshapes the offense entirely, one thing is guaranteed: the black and gold will keep the entire NFL watching. And in the Steel City, that's the only way it's ever supposed to be.